this episode, we're going to focus on a protective idea that feels almost invisible when it's working well: catching bad changes before they become part of the repository's history. In automation work, the cost of a bad change can be disproportionate because automation is designed to run repeatedly and sometimes with powerful access. That means a small mistake can turn into a repeated failure, a noisy incident, or even a security problem, and those outcomes are hardest to unwind once the change has spread through the shared history. Git hooks are a way to place guardrails close to where changes are created before they are committed or shared. The point is not to distrust developers, especially beginners, but to accept reality. Everyone makes mistakes, and the best time to catch a mistake is when it is still local and easy to fix. When hooks are used thoughtfully, they reduce rework and reduce risk, while letting teams move faster with more confidence. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at Cyber.Author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A hook is essentially a small piece of logic that Git can run automatically at specific moments in the workflow, such as right before a commit is created. You can think of a hook as a checkpoint that asks, does this change meet the rules we agreed on? If the answer is yes, the workflow continues as normal. If the answer is no, Git can stop the action and tell you what needs attention. The key idea is timing. Hooks run before the change becomes part of the recorded history, which means they prevent problems from entering the repo rather than detecting them later. Beginners often learn quality checks as something that happens after code is shared, like a build pipeline failing, but hooks move some of that checking earlier. That earlier placement saves time because you fix issues at the source instead of discovering them after they have already interrupted others. Hooks matter in automation repositories because not all problems are equal, and some are easier to prevent than to recover from. For example, a commit that accidentally includes a sensitive credential can create an incident even if it is quickly removed later, because the history may already have been copied, mirrored, or scanned. A commit that breaks formatting might not be a security incident, but it can still create confusion and slow review. A commit that introduces a subtle logic change might pass basic testing, but cause runtime failures when the automation runs under real conditions. Hooks are not meant to replace review or testing, but they can prevent the simplest, most common categories of mistakes from getting traction. Think of hooks as the first line of defense, a local safety net that catches predictable errors before they become shared problems. It helps to distinguish between preventing bad commits and preventing bad pushes, because hooks can exist at different stages. A commit stage hook runs before a commit is finalized, which is great for enforcing local standards like formatting, basic linting, and prohibiting certain file patterns. A push stage hook runs before changes are sent to a remote, which can be useful for making sure you are not pushing something obviously broken or sensitive. The important beginner point is that hooks are event-driven, meaning they attach to a moment in the workflow rather than being something you have to remember to run. That design reduces reliance on willpower, which is a good thing, because under stress people forget. In automation work, stress might arrive as a deadline or an incident, and that's exactly when you want guardrails to be automatic. The goal is to make the safe path the easy path. A well-designed hook focuses on problems that can be detected reliably and quickly. If a hook is slow, flaky, or full of false positives, people will resent it and look for ways around it. That resentment is a sign that the hook is misaligned with the goal. The best hooks check rules that are objective, like whether required files are present, whether file names match conventions, whether code passes a fast static check, or whether obvious secrets are being committed. These are issues that can be detected without needing deep context or long-running tests. Beginners should notice that this is not about judging code quality in a subjective way. It's about enforcing consistency and preventing avoidable hazards. When hooks are small and trustworthy, teams benefit because the shared repository becomes cleaner and less risky with minimal effort from each contributor. The concept of shifting checks left, meaning earlier in the workflow, is useful here because it frames why hooks exist. If you only run checks after changes are merged, you discover problems late, when multiple changes are already mixed together and the source of the problem is harder to isolate. Hooks shift some checks earlier, when the change is still isolated in your working tree and staging area. That isolation makes diagnosis easier because you know exactly what you just changed. It also reduces the blast radius because your mistake has not yet been shared. In automation repositories, blast radius is a practical concern, not a theoretical one. A bad change in a shared branch can trigger pipeline failures for the whole team, slowing everyone down. If the same issue is caught locally by a hook, it affects only the person who made the change, and it can often be fixed in minutes. Hooks also contribute to auditability and consistency by ensuring that the history follows agreed standards. If commit messages must include certain information, a hook can enforce that format. If the team has branch naming conventions or requires that certain files are updated together, a hook can check for that relationship. This is valuable because rules that live only in human memory tend to be applied inconsistently, especially by beginners who are still learning. Inconsistent standards create friction during review and make it harder to interpret history later. With hooks, standards become part of the workflow, not just part of a document. That matters in automation because the repository history is often used as evidence during incident analysis or compliance review. If your repo history is clean and consistent, it tells a clearer story about how changes were made and validated. At the same time, it's important to be realistic about what hooks can and cannot do. Hooks run locally, which means they can be bypassed if someone disables them. And they also depend on being present and configured on each contributor's machine. That is why hooks are best seen as a helpful guardrail rather than an absolute enforcement mechanism. For strong enforcement, teams often pair hooks with remote checks in shared pipelines. So even if a local hook is missing, the remote gate still catches issues. The beginner takeaway is that hooks are part of a layered defense. You want local checks to catch issues early and reduce wasted cycles. And you want shared checks to provide consistent enforcement at the point where changes become part of the official shared baseline. Together, they make it harder for mistakes to slip through while still keeping the workflow workable. From an educational perspective, hooks can also teach good habits by giving immediate feedback. When a hook blocks a commit because formatting is inconsistent or because a file contains suspicious patterns, it provides a clear moment of learning. Instead of discovering the problem later through a failing pipeline or a code review comment, you learn while the change is fresh in your mind. This reduces frustration because the fix is immediate and contextual. Beginners benefit because they do not have to guess what the team expects. The workflow tells them. Over time, this builds consistency across contributors, which makes collaboration smoother. In automation, smoother collaboration translates into fewer integration delays and fewer last-minute surprises before releases. Hooks are also useful for protecting the repo from changes that are technically valid but operationally risky. For example, a change might pass basic syntax checks but accidentally modify a file that should not be changed casually, such as a shared configuration template or a policy file. A hook can warn or block when certain sensitive areas are touched without accompanying context. This kind of protection is not about preventing change. It is about forcing attention. Automation environments often have fragile points where small changes have large effects, and hooks can act as a reminder that you are crossing a boundary that deserves extra care. For beginners, this is a valuable lesson in operational thinking. Not every file is equal in risk, and the workflow can reflect that reality. When you build guardrails around high-impact areas, you reduce the chance of an accidental outage caused by a casual edit. To connect hooks back to deployability, think about what deployable automation needs: predictable behavior, consistent structure, and a history you can trust. Hooks support all three by preventing easy-to-make mistakes from entering the recorded change stream. They reduce the number of broken commits, they reduce noise in reviews, and they reduce the chance of accidental secret leaks or inconsistent standards. Most importantly, they reduce rework because problems caught early are cheaper to fix. When teams adopt hooks thoughtfully, they often find they can move faster because fewer cycles are spent bouncing changes back and forth. The stable branch becomes more stable because fewer bad changes reach it in the first place. For automation work, that stability is not a luxury. It's the foundation that keeps deployment and operations predictable. To wrap this together, using hooks effectively means choosing checks that are fast, reliable, and focused on preventing real harm, and then making them part of the natural workflow so they do not rely on memory. Hooks help keep mistakes local, teach standards through immediate feedback, and protect shared history from avoidable hazards. They are not a replacement for review or testing, but they are a strong first line of defense that can dramatically reduce merge pain and rework. When you treat hooks as guardrails rather than obstacles, you unlock a workflow where quality is built in early and often. That is exactly what deployable automation needs, because a repository that stays clean and consistent is a repository you can trust to deliver reliable behavior when the automation runs for real.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.